If you're retired, or your parents are, the one check that's supposed to be the thing you can always count on just had a countdown clock put on it. And almost nobody is telling you the truth about what's really happening to it. After my last video, one of you left a comment that stopped me cold. I'm going to put it on screen right now, word for word, because this person connected something the news completely missed. Read that again. To lower it means Social Security is further gutted. This viewer figured out, on their own, in a comment, the exact trap I want to walk you through today. Because 3 weeks ago, I showed you that the new Fed chair wants to change how we measure inflation. A lot of you asked me,
Tim, why does that actually matter for regular people?
this is the answer. And it's worse than the headline. Here's what almost nobody is telling you. This week, a new study landed saying Social Security gets cut in 2032, and your check could drop around $500 a month. That's the part the news is running with. But there's a second cut happening at the same time, quietly, that nobody is covering. They are coming at your benefits from two directions at once. One you can see, one you can't. And if you've ever felt like the system is rigged, so the people in charge always come out ahead while the average person eats the loss, stay with me. Because what I found is going to confirm exactly that. I'm not here to scare you. On this channel, we follow the plumbing, not the panic. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the real mechanism and the only honest read on what it means for your money. Let's get into it. Let's start with the headline, because the fear is real and it deserves a straight answer. This week, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonpartisan fiscal watchdog, not a political outfit, put out a fresh analysis. And here's what it said. If Washington does nothing, the Social Security Trust Fund runs dry in late 2032. The day that happens, benefits don't stop, but they automatically get cut by about 24%. For the average retiree, that's roughly $500 a month. Gone. Around $5,500 a year. And it's not even across the board. The study broke it down state by state. The cut ranges from about $459 a month on the low end to $556 on the high end. If you're in Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, you get hit the hardest. Now I need to be precise with you, because precision is the whole point of this channel, and I know you'll fact check me. You always do, and I love you for it. The government's official trustees report puts that depletion date at 2033, with a 23% cut. This new study says 2032 and 24%. So why the gap? The watchdog group is baking in more recent policy changes and revenue projections that pull the date a year closer. Here's the part that should bother you. The argument isn't whether the cut happens. Everyone agrees it's coming. The only debate is whether it's 6 years away or 7. That's the situation. A benefit that 50, 60 million people built their entire retirement around, on a countdown clock. So the natural question is the one that actually matters. How did we get here, and what is really driving it? Because once you see the mechanism, this stops being a vague fear and starts being something you can actually plan around. Okay, let me slow all the way down here, because this is the whole video. There are two cuts. I'm going to give you both. But first I need you to hear something. Because the news keeps framing this like Social Security is some charity program that's running out of money. It isn't. You didn't ask for this. It was taken out of every paycheck you ever earned. For 40 years. With a promise attached. This isn't a handout drying up. It's the government quietly walking back a deal you already paid for. In full. Hold on to that feeling, because it's the honest one. Now let me show you exactly how they do it. Cut number 1, the one you can see. You've probably heard Social Security called a Ponzi scheme in the comments. It's not, but I understand why it feels that way, so let me show you how it actually works. For decades, the money working Americans paid in was more than the money going out to retirees. That surplus didn't sit in a vault. By law, it got invested in the safest asset on earth, U.S. Treasury bonds. IOUs from the government. So the trust fund isn't a pile of cash, it's a giant stack of Treasury bonds. And here's the connection nobody's making. Remember my video on the $39 trillion debt, where I asked who keeps buying America's debt? Well, the Social Security Trust Fund has been one of the single biggest lenders to the U.S. government for 40 years. It's a massive buyer of that debt. Now, the baby boomers retired. More money flows out than comes in. So the trust fund has to start selling those bonds to cover the checks. And that flips the whole picture. The biggest buyer of government debt is about to become a seller. When the bonds run out, late 2032, 2033, pick your year, there's no surplus left. The system can only pay what's currently coming in from payroll taxes. And that only covers about 76% of the promised benefits. That's your 24% cut. That's cut number one, the plumbing, not the panic. Now cut number two, the one they don't want you to see. This is where my last video connects. And this is the part that made me want to make this video. Every year, your Social Security check gets a raise. It's called the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. It's supposed to keep your check rising with inflation, so your money buys the same amount of groceries next year as it did this year. Simple idea, fair idea. But here's the catch. That raise is pegged to a government inflation number. When the official inflation number is high, your raise is big. When the official number is low, your raise is small. Now think back to what I showed you 3 weeks ago. The new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, said openly that he wants to change how the government measures inflation. He wants to switch to a method that makes the official inflation number read almost a full percentage point lower than it does today. I said it then, and I'll say it again. The most powerful banker in the world wants to change the ruler while prices are still rising. Follow that all the way through. If you shrink the official inflation number, you shrink the COLA. And if you shrink the COLA, you shrink everyone's Social Security raise. Every single year, forever. That's not a one-time 24% cliff in 2032. That's a slow, quiet bleed that starts now and compounds every year. Your check might technically go up, but what it actually buys goes down. Your retirement number looks fine on the screen, and it buys less every year. And that viewer in the comment, they saw it. To say inflation is lower means Social Security is further gutted. Exactly right. Because the same lower number that lets the government pay less interest on its debt also lets it pay you a smaller raise. One ruler, two payoffs for them, two cuts for you. Quick favor before I keep going. If this is making something click that the news never explained to you, drop a comment and tell me. And if you've got a parent or a friend who's counting on Social Security, send them this video. That's genuinely how this channel grows. And this is the kind of thing people need to hear from someone who's not trying to scare them. Now let me be honest and steelman the other side, because the smartest comment on my last video deserves an answer. One of you made a sharp point. What about AI? What if artificial intelligence drives prices down, deflation, and inflation just stops being a problem? It's a real argument, and I'm not going to dodge it. Here's the thing. Even if AI brings deflation, it doesn't save Social Security. It makes it harder. Social Security's promises are fixed dollar amounts. If prices and wages fall, the payroll taxes funding the system fall right along with them. But the checks owed don't. So a deflationary world actually starves the system faster. Either way, inflation or deflation, the trap holds. The math doesn't care which direction prices go. That's why this is structural, not political. So follow the money. Where does this actually land? On you. If you're already retired or close to it, you're the most exposed. You're on a fixed income, pegged to a number the government is actively trying to shrink, with a hard cut scheduled before the end of the decade. And here's the part that doesn't make the headlines. It's not just the check. It's everything the check has to cover. Let me make this real because fixed income is just two words until it's someone you love. Picture your mom. She opens her statement and the check is the same as last month. So on paper, nothing's wrong. But the property tax bill went up again. Groceries went up again. Gas went up again. Nobody mailed her a letter saying her benefits were cut. They didn't have to. The cut happened to what the check can buy. And so she just quietly starts running out of money 4 days earlier, every month. And she doesn't tell anyone because she's proud and because she doesn't fully understand why the math stopped working. That's the part that gets me. One of you left a comment last time about exactly this, that as inflation pushes your home's value up, your property tax follows. And if you can't pay it, you can lose the house you already own outright. Think about who that lands on hardest. A retiree on a fixed check, taxed out of the home they spent 30 years paying off. That's not a hypothetical. That's happening right now to real people, while the headlines argue about whether the date is 2032 or 2033. So, what do you actually do about it? I want to be careful here. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't advice. This is how I think about the board. And the honest answer is you cannot control what Congress does to the system, but you can control how much of your future you've parked inside it. The lesson underneath all of this is concentration risk. If Social Security is your only retirement plan, you are 100% exposed to a system with a countdown clock and a government that's quietly shrinking the ruler. The whole game is to not be fully dependent on a promise that someone else can rewrite. That logic points toward owning things the government can't quietly dilute. Hard, scarce assets that don't depend on a ruler somebody in Washington gets to redefine. Real estate is one. If you can buy at a discount, it produces income and it tends to hold its value when the dollar loses purchasing power. And for the same reason I keep arriving at, not starting from, this is part of why some people are looking at Bitcoin, a fixed supply asset that no central authority can print more of or remeasure. I'm not telling you to buy anything today. I'm telling you the evidence keeps pointing the same direction, toward things with a supply nobody can change by decree. That's where the logic leads when the lesson is don't let one promise be your whole plan. So here's exactly what I'm watching from here, and what I think you should watch too. I'm going to give you the two honest scenarios, because I'm not going to pretend I know which one happens. Scenario 1, the patch. Congress does what it's always done at the last minute. They raise the payroll tax cap, or nudge the retirement age up, or means test benefits for higher earners. The 2032 cliff gets pushed out. Nobody loses a full 24% overnight. But notice, every one of those fixes is itself a cut. You pay more in, or you wait longer, or you get less. The cliff becomes a slope. It still goes down. Scenario 2, the quiet bleed. Congress stays frozen because touching Social Security is the third rail of American politics. No big vote, no dramatic headline. Instead, the COLA just quietly shrinks year after year under the new inflation math. And your purchasing power erodes so slowly, most people never notice until it's too late. No cliff, just a slow grind. This is the one I think is most likely, and it's the one almost nobody is planning for. Here are the three signals that tell you which way it's breaking. Signal 1, the inflation measurement. Watch whether Warsh and the Fed actually move to the new way of measuring inflation. If they do, your future COLA just got smaller, and the quiet bleed is on. This is the single most important thing to watch, and it's the one the news won't frame this way. Signal 2, the next trustees report. Every year the government updates the depletion date. Watch whether 2033 holds, or whether it keeps sliding toward 2032 and earlier. The direction of that date tells you how fast this is moving. Signal 3, any Social Security bill in Congress. The second you see a serious proposal, payroll cap, retirement age, means testing, that's your signal the patch scenario is starting. And the details of that bill tell you exactly who's being asked to absorb the cut. Watch those three. You'll understand this story better than 90% of the headlines screaming at you about it. Here's the one sentence to take with you. Social Security isn't facing one cut in 2032. It's facing two cuts at once. The trust fund running dry that everyone's talking about, and the quiet shrinking of your raise through a redefined inflation number that almost nobody is. Same playbook every time. The system protects itself, and the average person is asked to eat the loss. Unless you see it coming and refuse to make that one promise your whole plan. And look, I'm not telling you any of this to scare you. I'm telling you because the people who get hurt the most by this are the ones who never saw it coming, who trusted the headline that said, "Don't worry, they'll fix it." Maybe they will, but your retirement is too important to bet entirely on maybe. The single most powerful thing you can do today costs you nothing. I built a free tool. It's called the Retirement Gap Calculator. It's on my website, timtalksfinance.com, and I've linked it right at the top of the description. In about 2 minutes, it shows you exactly how much of your retirement is leaning on this one promise and where your real gap is. Just knowing that number puts you ahead of almost everyone watching this video. It's the first move toward protecting yourself. Don't let this be something that happens to you. Make it something you saw coming. I've linked my breakdown of the Fed's new inflation ruler in the description below. If you want to understand the second cut in full, that's the one to watch next. It's the setup for everything I showed you today. And next week, I'm following the thread on one of those three signals. I dug into what a payroll tax cap fix would actually cost you, depending on your income, and the number genuinely surprised me. That's the next video. When the financial news confuses or scares you, that's what this channel is for. We follow the plumbing, not the panic, and we go wherever the truth leads. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.